Hello and welcome to Economy and Markets TV, where we have conversations with a purpose. I'm your host, Dave Okenquist, the Senior Research Analyst here at Dent. Joining me is Mr. Harry Dent, fresh off his trip from Australia, back into the swing of things. Harry, welcome back.
Yeah, nice to be back. I'm still a little jet lagged, but yeah, nice, very nice to be back.
So, Harry, now that you had a little bit of time to adjust and get back into the saddle, let's just talk about what you've seen in the markets in your time here.
Yeah, one of the things I was saying in Australia, and just how can people not get the simple fact that no matter how much stimulus, I mean, this 16 to 18 trillion dollars by different of quantitative easing, one country, all coordinated globally, all around the world. Trump cuts taxes at the top of a boom. When corporate tax is the highest as a percentage of GDP ever, this is unprecedented stimulus. And next, they're going to send money direct to consumers. How can people not get that no matter how much we stimulate, we keep slumping back into 2% growth in the US and 1% growth in Europe and zero in Japan? And that's just relative to our, different demographics. We're just a little stronger in demographics, and a little less in debt and stuff. How can people get that something's wrong here? This much stimulus, we should have a hyperinflation. We should be growing at 6 to 8% instead of 2% on average. So it just shows underlying, and of course we've been saying this, the fundamental trends are weak. Our demographics have been declining since late 2007, as I predicted 20 years before it happened. And we've been filling that decline with quantitative easing. But it's artificial stuff. The stock market's overvalued about 120%, almost exactly how much earnings per share are higher than corporate earnings because everybody's buying back their own stocks with free money from the Fed. It's like this game you can't lose until the bubble bursts. Imagine how bad S&P 500 corporate managers are going to look. It's taking all their shareholders' cash flow from this unbelievable bubble and putting it into buying their own stocks at overvaluation levels. Then they crash 70, 89%. And you look like an idiot. So,
Harry, I got a question on that, if you don't mind. I don't know if you saw this, but a Democrat senator candidate for Bernie Sanders, in other words, Democrat, seeking the nomination. One of his proposals I saw today on Twitter was to eliminate stock buybacks, and I want to just talk about maybe that idea also, and this idea of stimulus. I mean, depending on when this crash happens and who's in office, it could be big stimulus from regardless of who's in office. Don't you think?
Yeah, I actually would be for that. It's cheating, and it's window dressing. It's creating an artificial appearance that you're growing faster than you are and your stock's going up, which means, people already naturally go for bubbles. So things like stock buybacks only increase bubbles. But I would apply the same thing to the government. What's the government doing? They're buying their own bonds. They're issuing record debt, buying their own bonds, pushing down the yields, which means, of course, how does Japan service 260% debt to GDP for their government debt? Ours is only 104. It's because they're paying almost zero interest because they bought their own bonds and pushed the interest down to zero.
Right.
Okay, well, that's cheating. And that, when you push bond rates down, then all bond rates yields go down, even higher risk bonds. All stocks go up in value because their earnings are discounted back at lower rates and worth more, and their borrowing's cheaper. And then they use this cheap money to buy back their stocks. Buying back your stocks is cheating. You shouldn't be able to do that unless there's some concrete reason. But governments shouldn't be able to buy their bonds either. That's cheating. It's one thing, okay, lower interest rates, whatever, some emergency, these repo thing, well, that's the kind of an emergency thing. The first year of the Great Depression, I don't think the government did enough there. The first year in 2009, that $1 trillion the Fed put in, I would say, you know what, a one-time shot to just make sure the banking system doesn't just fall over like a thud, at least has a little time to reorganize and deleverage more intelligently, makes sense. But to put us on heroin or crack for 9, 10, 11 years straight, we're on a drug.
Yeah.
Buying back your own bonds and pushing yields to negative levels adjusted for inflation, that's cheating. That means money is costless, and when money's costless, people will waste it.
So what's the cost of the cheating, Harry? What's the ultimate cost?
Financial asset bubble. All the gold bugs have been saying, oh, all this money printing, oh, it's going to cause hyperinflation. We've always said no. They're fighting deflation. That's the trend. That's why no matter how much money we print, we don't grow much, because consumers admit the only way to create inflation is to grow the money supply.
Yeah.
Money supply is just cash and deposits. It's not financial assets like stocks and real estate and bonds and all this sort of stuff. The money supply has to grow faster than GDP and all that sort of stuff. And then you get inflation, and then yields go up. That's not happening. The money from all this money printing is not going into bank lending, which multiplies the money supply, which can create consumer and hyperinflation at extremes. It's going into financial assets. So the price of this is a huge, unprecedented, pervasive global bubble in everything. Commodities are the only ones that have burst already, and they still got more to go. Real estate, stocks, bonds, and bonds will be the last to peak and burst because they'll be the safe haven, at least the quality bond. So that's the cost, this financial asset bubble. What's worse than a bubble? I remember David Stockman said, at our conference, it used to be that slowing economies, recessions would cause stock crashes. Now, what would cause a recession? A stock crash. We put out a chart, Dave, just weeks ago. Yep. $123 trillion in private, not even financial institutions, just corporate and consumer financial assets, net financial, $123 trillion, which historically, to get back to reality, would have to drop $61.5 trillion, 50%. $61.5 trillion disappears from the economy? You don't think people will stop buying yachts and crap? My God. One of the things I distinguish with it, and I'm covering this in the January boom and bust just ahead.
Great.
And we had this debate at our conference with Lacey and David Stockman. There's two ways to create money. The normal way, banks take reserves created by the Fed and lend, but they have to lend them to multiply them. It doesn't grow by itself. And Lacey was saying, hey, Fed can't print money, they can only encourage it. And then Stockman said, no, they're injecting money in. And I said, I agree with both of you. You're right, money supply is not growing. We don't have to worry about hyperinflation from money printing. The money printing's going into buying financial assets and driving them up. And it's when this bubble bursts that we're going to see massive debt. Now, that same number globally is more like 400 trillion. What if 150 to 200 trillion disappeared from the global economy? Mainly from higher income, affluent people, and they're the only people spending money. The only reason we're growing at 2% is not Homer Simpson. Their wages haven't gone up until recently. It's right. The most affluent people who own financial assets, and they're going to stop spending like crazy. And the Chinese more than anybody, because they have the most money in things like real estate, and they're Australians. That's their problem, not so much the stock bubble, the real estate. So it's this financial asset bubble. When it bursts, governments are not going to be able to stop it. It'll just at some point it'll break down so hard they will not be able to stop it, because you can't keep a bubble going forever. It's impossible. It is a financial orgasm. Can't keep it going forever, and we're getting close here.
Absolutely. Harry, thank you so much. A lot of information in there. And of course, if you want to get Harry's upcoming January boom and bust article, well, he's just getting all of that detail. You definitely subscribe to Boom and Bust. Harry, we will see you next week. Also, if you have a question for Harry that I can read on air here, so to speak, you can send that to tv@economyandmarkets.com. For Harry Dent, I'm Dave Okenquist, and this has been Economy and Markets TV.